You didn't see this one coming, did you? Judging someone based on their hat, and then finding out they hold your future in their hands? Oh, what a twist. This story will have you on the edge of your seat. So how does someone find himself in a situation like this one? It was a busy afternoon in a high-end coffee shop located in the heart of Manhattan. The usual sounds of steaming espresso machines and murmured conversations filled the air. Among the crowd sat an ambitious young attorney named Ryan Morgan, known for his quick wit, sharp tongue, and unapologetic opinions. He prided himself on being outspoken, a rising star in the legal field. Ryan had just finished a high-stakes negotiation for a corporate client and was enjoying a rare moment of relaxation. Dressed impeccably in a tailored gray suit with his sleek laptop open before him, he projected an air of confidence and determination. But as he sipped his cappuccino, his eyes narrowed when a woman walked in wearing a bright red MAGA cap. The woman, probably in her late 60s, appeared unbothered by the stares her cap elicited. Dressed in a simple button-down shirt, slacks, and polished shoes, she exuded an understated elegance. She carried an aura of quiet authority, but to Ryan, all he saw was someone who, in his mind, epitomized everything wrong with the country. He watched as she approached the counter to order her drink, smiling politely at the barista. Ryan's stomach churned. "Of all places," he muttered under his breath. He turned to his colleague, Mark, who had accompanied him to the cafe. "Look at that," he whispered, nodding toward the woman. "Wearing that hat in New York? Seriously?" Mark glanced over and shrugged. "So what?" "It's just a hat, Ryan. Let it go." But Ryan was already bristling. "It's not just a hat, Mark. It's a symbol of—" He paused, lowering his voice. "Everything divisive. I mean, come on. How tone-deaf do you have to be?" Mark sighed, knowing better than to argue with Ryan when he was on a tirade. The woman, now holding her coffee, scanned the room for a seat. To Ryan's dismay, the only open spot was directly across from him. She approached with a polite smile. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" she asked, her voice calm and measured. Ryan hesitated for a split second, his instinct to say no warring with his annoyance. Finally, he gestured to the chair. "Go ahead," he said, his tone clipped. She nodded in thanks and settled into the seat, placing her coffee and a worn leather briefcase on the table. Ryan couldn't help but notice her composed demeanor, but his irritation only grew as the bright red cap seemed to mock him from across the table. "You know," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the ambient noise, "I'm surprised you'd wear that hat around here. Bold choice." The woman looked up, her gray eyes meeting his with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Why's that?" she asked simply. Ryan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Because it's controversial, to say the least. You're bound to get reactions, not all of them positive." The woman took a slow sip of her coffee before replying. "I've found that people's reactions to this hat say more about them than it does about me." Ryan raised an eyebrow, his temper flaring. "That's a convenient way to dodge accountability, but let's not pretend it doesn't send a clear message." She set her cup down gently and tilted her head, studying him. "And what message do you think it sends?" "Oh, I think you know," Ryan shot back, his voice laced with sarcasm. "It's a symbol of division, ignorance, and, frankly, privilege." The woman's lips curved into a faint smile. "Interesting. And here I thought it was just a hat." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, trying to signal Ryan to drop the subject, but he was on a roll. "It's not just a hat," he insisted. "It represents a political ideology that's hurt a lot of people. Maybe you should consider that before wearing it in public." The woman's gaze remained steady, unperturbed by his sharp tone. "I appreciate your perspective," she said evenly, "but I've learned over the years that people often judge too quickly, without knowing the full story." Ryan scoffed. "Oh, come on, that's a cop-out. You can't just dismiss criticism by calling it judgment." The woman's expression didn't waver. "And yet, here we are. You've already decided who I am based on a piece of fabric. Perhaps you're the one passing judgment." The remark hit a nerve, and Ryan's cheeks flushed. Before he could retort, the woman glanced at her watch and stood, picking up her briefcase. "Before we reveal what she did next, we would like to ask you to show us your support. How, you might ask? Well, it's pretty simple. Subscribe to our channel and make sure to like this video while you're at it. Now let's get back to the story. Thank you for the conversation, she said politely. It's always enlightening to hear different viewpoints. As she walked away, Ryan's frustration simmered. The audacity, he muttered. Mark, however, seemed lost in thought. 2 weeks later, Ryan found himself in a courtroom, preparing to argue a high-profile case. His client, a tech entrepreneur embroiled in a lawsuit, had placed his trust in his abilities. Ryan was confident, ready to showcase his legal prowess. When the bailiff announced the judge's arrival, Ryan's jaw nearly hit the floor. There, walking into the courtroom with the same composed demeanor, was the woman in the MAGA cap. All rise for the Honorable Judge Eleanor Carrington, the bailiff intoned. Ryan's heart sank. His mind raced as he realized the full extent of his earlier encounter. Judge Carrington wasn't just any judge. She was one of the most respected legal minds in the country, known for her fairness and unshakable integrity, and he had gone out of his way to insult her. As she took her seat on the bench, Judge Carrington's eyes briefly met Ryan's. There was no malice in her gaze, only the same calm curiosity he had seen before. But Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that she remembered him and their conversation. "Counsel, are you ready to proceed?" she asked, her voice steady and authoritative. Ryan cleared his throat, struggling to maintain his composure. "Yes, Your Honor," he managed to say. The proceedings began, and Ryan's nerves gradually gave way to focus as he presented his arguments. Judge Carrington listened intently, her questions probing but fair. Throughout the trial, she showed no indication of bias or resentment, treating both sides with equal respect. But Ryan couldn't shake his guilt. During a recess, he approached Mark, who had accompanied him to court as part of the legal team. "Do you think she remembers me?" he whispered. Mark gave him a pointed look. "Oh, she remembers. But she's not the type to hold a grudge. Just do your job, Ryan." The case stretched on for several weeks, and Ryan's admiration for Judge Carrington grew with each passing day. Despite his initial assumptions, he saw firsthand the depth of her wisdom and the fairness of her rulings. By the time the trial concluded, Ryan knew he owed her an apology. After the final verdict was delivered, Ryan lingered in the courtroom as the other attorneys and spectators filed out. Judge Carrington was gathering her notes when he approached the bench. "Your Honor," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. She looked up, her expression neutral. "Yes, Mr. Morgan." He took a deep breath. "I just wanted to say, I owe you an apology for the way I spoke to you in the coffee shop. I was out of line, and I'm deeply sorry." Judge Carrington regarded him for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Morgan. It takes courage to admit when you've been wrong. Apology accepted." Ryan felt a wave of relief wash over him. "I've learned a lot from watching you during this trial, not just about the law, but about integrity. Thank you for that." A faint smile touched her lips. "The law is more than rules and arguments, Mr. Morgan. It's about understanding people, their stories, their struggles. Perhaps that's a lesson we both needed to learn." Ryan nodded, feeling a newfound respect for the woman he had once judged so harshly. As he left the courtroom, he couldn't help but reflect on how wrong he had been, and how much he still had to learn. Would you have reacted the same way as Ryan in the coffee shop? Let us know in the comments below.